Are you a digitally savvy or aspiring travel business owner wanting to shake things up in 2023? Then you need to join us for the Travel Trend Summit on the Gold Coast in May. Travel Trend is the ultimate one-day live event that is hell-bent on bridging the gap between our travel business owners and their untapped potential of successfully having a standout travel brand. Want more? Head to stephaниemyers.academy/travel trend and grab your tickets now. Trust me when I say that this is an event you do not want to miss. Be quick, as tickets are only strictly limited. See you there. Hey, I'm Steph, and I'm obsessed with all things travel, marketing, branding, and helping you stand out from the crowd. In just under 2 years, I went from being a home-based travel agent with zero clue how to make it work in the digital world to launching an international ranking travel podcast and creating an online course to help travel agents in lead generation. Here's one thing I know for sure: there has never in the history of the world been a better time to create the travel business you've always wanted. All you need is an actionable strategy and someone to show you the way. Picture this: we're going to spend the next hour of our time together at the Swim Up Pool Bar, where over a cocktail, we deep dive into travel-related topics, mixed with a little classroom training. This show is dedicated to encouraging you to step outside of your comfort zone and into your travel business. I'll show you how I did it and how you can too. Hit subscribe now and let's get into it. If you're a travel agent wanting to stand out in the digital world but you struggle with consistency, tech isn't your jam and you have no idea where to start, join my free masterclass where I talk about exactly this. Head to stephaниemyers.academy/masterclass. You're listening to Unplug in Paradise, the podcast. Hello, a warm welcome back to the podcast. This week, in case you haven't realised, our new podcast release date is now on Friday. After last week's episode number 59, we spoke about honouring our workflow. So I had to dig in deep and I did some transforming in my own business behind the scenes, and I decided, well, Friday to release the podcast is much more aligned with my natural workflow. So here we are. I am taking action. I am not just preaching. I'm actually doing the things that I'm, sharing on the podcast as well. So yeah, hopefully this continues, and I'm really looking forward to how it feels just switching around one thing. Like, producing a podcast is no easy feat, and I suppose if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. But it is one of those things that does take quite a bit of time out of the week. And I found myself trying to cram everything in the last 2 days because, if it wasn't for the last minute, would anything be done? So, yeah, I figure if I launch it on a Friday, then at least I've got the week to kind of do my interview, edit, do my assets, and then do the show notes and everything like that behind the scenes. So, yeah. And then it's all done on Friday, and then you've got something to listen to over the weekend if you're going for a drive, going for a walk, or heading out to the beach. I feel like podcasts are such an underrated resource. And I don't know about you, but I don't really listen to podcasts during the week. But on the weekends, I definitely do, because I feel like my mind is much more open. So yeah, that's me. But this episode today is one that's really close to my heart. So the guest that we have on today's show is actually my identical twin sister. Her name is Jade, and for those people who may not be aware, yes, I'm an identical twin. Yes, we sound alike. So good luck trying to decipher who's speaking in this episode. And yes, we definitely do look alike. We have changed a lot over the years, but we definitely do have identical traits. So for those people who are wondering, and if you're on my email list, you're most likely going to know exactly how identical we are because I do include some photos. But if you're not on my email list, you need to get on it. So how about you DM me at Travel by Stephanie over on Instagram and I can get you on the list. Also, if you are attending our Travel Trend event, you are in for an epic surprise. We are also looking at adding in a few extra surprises to add to the experience of the day. So that's all happening behind the scenes. I don't mean to be quite like, really hush hush behind the scenes, but there is just so much work to do when planning an event. It's insane. But anyway, I really want you to meet my twin sister. I really hope that you get a lot out of this episode. It's something that came to me as a thought, in the middle of the night, one of those kind of thoughts. And I thought, why don't I have Jade on the podcast? Because I feel like in my own personal journey as a business, as a person is in business, as an individual person within myself, also knowing that I'm a twin, I feel like I've been talking about my own personal brand since I could speak, because I always had to educate family members and friends of people who each of us were, because no one knew we were that identical. So anyway, hope you enjoy the podcast, and yeah, would love to hear your thoughts. It's going to be, I said to Jade, I said, we could have an encore. People might love us and they might want us back on the podcast. So let us know if that's the case. All right. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's dive in and meet Jade. Before we begin today's episode, would you please join me while we recognise the generations of the local Aboriginal people of the Bundjalung Nation who have lived in and derived their physical and spiritual needs from the forests, rivers, lakes and streams of this beautiful valley over thousands of years as the traditional owners and custodians of these lands. Today on the podcast, I've got an extra special guest, my identical twin sister, Jade Myers. Jadey, how does it feel to be on the podcast?
Exciting.
Exciting?
Very much. Yeah, very much so. This is my first podcast cameo appearance.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is feeling a little weird actually, because I don't know whether to be professional or to chat like we normally do. So we will be fine. I'm so freaking nervous. I'm not normally this nervous interviewing anyone, but here we are. So, for the people tuning into the episode today who may not already have realized, but I am an identical twin. I am one of two. And for our entire lives, we've had, people come up to us and often mistake us for one or the other. It's been a bit of a thing, hasn't it?
Yes, very much so. Ever since we were very young, it was either we had a freckle on our nose and the other one didn't, or one had a scar on their foot and the other one didn't. When we started school, it was a matter of we had to wear name badges, and it was all had to all be very age appropriate with the sound, the S at first for Stephanie, and then the J for Jade, and then as we got older, we got upgrades, didn't we?
Yeah, we used to tell people, because we used to get mistaken so much that it was kind of hurting our feelings a little bit too. Like, we'd go home quite upset that the kids at school didn't know who we were and didn't know which one was which. And if we were to try and, formulate any kind of relationship or friendship with anyone, they didn't even know who they were talking to, let alone seeing you for you. So yeah, I do remember having the upgrade from like the S badge to the actual Stephanie name badge, gold-plated baby. And I used to tell people that the reason why we had a badge was because we were what was it? Bus captains or something.
No. We were bus monitors.
Bus monitors, that's right.
Yeah, very, very, very important people we were, because we had badges.
VIPs.
Yes.
So basically, we had to justify to people that we needed these name badges for the bus when it wasn't even the case. It was to make things really comfortable for our teachers and, any other parents that would maybe come to the school. Generally not the kids. I think by then they had already realized who we were, which one was which, but it was only based on our appearances. And we had educated them as well as to how they could tell us apart. So I want to take the opportunity, Jade, to zoom back to when we were kids. What's your earliest memory of being a twin, and that you realized that people were really struggling knowing who was who?
Ooh. So my first memory of us and knowing that I was a twin was the fact that you and I had our own special language and dialogue that only you and I would share. And it was funny because I remember growing up thinking that, well, just really young, when we, didn't even know how to speak yet, we had dialogue with each other. And because no one else could understand, I remember looking at them thinking, what's wrong with them? Don't they understand what we're saying? It was just like, oh, you were the only person that I could understand and who understood me. And whether or not that was the case, but I mean, I feel like we worked it. Um, and I feel like sometimes with family, when grandparents would come to visit and stuff like that, you were often mistaken as the other twin when you felt like you had a relationship with them that ran deep enough that they would know who you were by speaking to you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and because they didn't know, it made, it does tend to make you feel after a while that you're not, they weren't really paying attention with who they were speaking to.
Mm.
And I have found that time and time again over the years. People will be mid through conversation and then realize they don't know who they're talking to. And
Mm.
I'm confused because I don't know what they're talking about or why they're talking to me the way they are, because it's like you trying to get me to fill in the gaps. So oh, so they go, oh, and how is your job at the, and you're like,
Keep
where are
going.
we going with this?
It's like a slow
I don't help
torture.
them anymore. I just watch them. I'm just like, yeah, okay, you going? Keep going. All right, go on.
It's like, okay, tie yourself in your own rope. Keep going.
You're the one telling the story here, mate.
Oh, I know. I can so relate, obviously. But going back to when we were kids and we would, family gatherings and things like that, we'd be posing in front of the camera and we'd be both dressed in identical clothing, and with the, all the French relatives clicking their fingers, look over here, smile, smile, fake smiles, same clothes, exactly the same dresses and clicking constantly. You would be smiling for like hours on end just so all of our relatives could get a photo of the twins. But with and to offer a little bit of a context, our you know we have French in our bloodline, so we'd have a lot of French relatives that would come in from overseas, from France, to visit. And obviously, like, they didn't know us. Well, side point, I don't think any of our family really know us or saw us for individuals. We were always just labeled the girls or the twins. um, but when they would come to visit us, they'd bring, these fancy dresses and things like that, in which case we weren't those types of girls. Like, obviously, growing up in Broom's Head, we were climbing trees, we were going to the beach, we were surfing, we were just
We're chasing wild brumbies through the bush to get their horse manure for our worm farm.
we were as bush as you could possibly go.
We made those cookers in our bathroom. Do you remember, with the big Milo tins?
Oh yeah, we'd
And we
have
had the little
kettles.
can at the bottom with the wound up cardboard with the
Yeah.
wax, and or what was it, kerosene or and wax that we put in there. We put it on fire and then we cook bacon in the bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to
like
do
little
heaps of
cave
random
women.
stuff.
Yeah.
But we were always outside. So, like, when our French relatives would come and bring us all these beautiful dresses, his Jade and I would march off down to the sports oval and basically climb straight up a footy post. And if you don't have that visual, just think of like a monkey, 2 hands, 2 feet, walking up a footy post. Then we get to the middle, we'd be swinging around, and before you know it, wouldn't take too long for the dress to fall straight over your head as you're spinning around upside down. You find yourself just swinging off the footy post in your knickers. And yeah, French relatives are kind of looking on, just going, oh my God, who are these two girls? Where'd they even come from? And they used to say, oh, you come from the bush. We're like, we don't come from the bush. We come from the beach.
Both, really, where the bush meets the beach.
I know. There wasn't much like, space between the bush. It was like bush in the backyard and beach in the front yard.
Yeah.
But yeah, so growing up in an environment where we were in a very small town, so Broom's Head at the time only had about 100 permanent residents. And if you're finding it hard to locate where Broom's Head is, it's about 20 minutes south of Yamba in northern New South Wales in Australia. And it's a tiny little place. So often when we do have family come to visit us, we'd be educating them from such a young age as to who we are and how you can tell the difference between Jade and Steph. So what was something that you always told our relos so they knew who they were speaking to?
Well, I had the freckle on my nose
So
and you
Jade,
didn't.
you had the freckle on your nose.
Right in the middle of my nose. I don't know where it is now, though.
Oh, it's still there. I see it.
Is it?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. And me, I have a beauty spot where location remains unnamed. I've got 2 freckles on my cheek, but I think they kind of appeared later on in life. So I suppose we spent a lot of time, educating our parents. So, oh, not our parents, but our relatives on who was who, which was, I think, was a really grown up thing to do because it's up to the adults to kind of know who it is that they're speaking to, right? Like what's not really up to the child to say, hey, I'm Steph. You spoke to me about this yesterday. Or I'm the one with the long hair and I have a long name. And Jade has, shorter hair and she has a short name. So that's another way that you can remember who's who.
Hmm.
So I guess, always having to have that education behind everything that we did growing up. And yeah, don't even get me started. Anytime anyone brought us like dolls, they would just, get given the most worst haircuts and throw to the bottom of the cupboard,
They would
never
die
to
a
be seen
terrible death. Yes.
again.
One
So
limb at a time.
exactly. Hate dolls. Still to this day, they freak me out. So growing up in a really small town, we didn't really leave our backyard, did we?
Um, we did, but we were also quite sheltered because there was a lot of animals out and about back in the day where we would have to be wary of. Our parents were always a bit worried that we were going to get trampled by brumbies one day.
Mm-hmm.
So whilst we did spend a lot of time down at the beach and out at the sports field and stuff, we did spend a lot of time outside just in general, or the rock pools. But yeah, the backyard was definitely like definitely the safe space.
Mm-hmm.
And we always would set the tent up in the backyard during the school holidays, but we were never allowed to sleep in it. Remember that? We were never
Yeah.
allowed to sleep in it. The brumbies will trample the tent. And they would. Sometimes you'd wake up in the morning and you'd go out in the backyard and the tent's down.
Mm.
And you'd
Yeah,
be
or
like,
you'd
oh,
find.
glad I wasn't sleeping in there.
So fast forward to when we were 10 years old, we obviously left Broom's Head at the age of 10 and moved up to the Byron Shire. We started school and it was asked whether we wanted to share, the same class, because we were just moving at the last term of the year. So we were enrolling into term 4, and it was asked whether we wanted to be in the same classroom. And I think at that point in time, we'd always been in the same classroom. We'd always surrounded ourselves with the same people. So being enrolled into a brand new school and having like a brand new set of friends each, what did you think about that? Were you very confident about being in a new classroom? Because I know that I absolutely hated being away from you.
I felt like I was sort of like a third party observer looking in, like I
Mhm.
wasn't really there. I remember looking around at all the other kids and thinking, oh yeah. But and I knew that you were in the classroom next door, but I guess I didn't feel that I hated it as much as it was just different for it was just a different experience again.
Mhm.
Because I guess we had always been in the same class and this was a bit different. So it was like, for me, there was a bit of a novelty to the fact. And also the fact that I was in what was it? You were in a 4-5 class and I was in a 4-5-6 class. So I
Mm.
had people that were like 2 years older than me in the same class as me, which was weird already. Um,
Come on now.
and
There
then
was only two of them.
we were doing something. We were doing something. What was it? Dictation.
Yeah,
I
I
had never
remember.
done that before. It felt all very grown up. And yeah, I was a bit distracted, to be honest.
I think that was the first time that we ever swapped classes as well. Do you
Yeah, we
remember?
did. Yeah, that was hilarious. Who came up with that idea though? Was that us or somebody else?
I don't know. I think we got dared.
Yeah, we
And
just did it one morning.
it was only till recess, so it was only for a few hours. And I remember sitting there in the class, and I think the person that you were sitting next to definitely knew that, because I think they were looking after us in a way that, oh, here's your book, here's your pencil that you write with, this is what
Yeah,
we
okay,
do.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they were kind of,
Following along.
yeah, enabling the situation. So yeah, I suppose at that young age, we did realize that being a twin was a novelty because of the attention that we'd get. And, just we found, I think, and I'm probably speaking from my own perspective, but when people would ask us which twin you were, it was almost like someone was handing you a little bit of like a little ball of power that you could play with their minds and emotions a little bit because obviously they really wanted to know, but you could
Keep
have
them
a
guessing.
game, make a game of it and just go, okay, well, you guess.
Keep the mystery going.
Absolutely. Making them work a little bit harder to find out, which twin that they were speaking to. So yeah, fast forward high school years, obviously towards the end of primary school and high school, we were getting quite a bit. There was a few differences coming through. Like, you obviously didn't want to look like me anymore, no offense. You got your ears pierced, and I literally, I think, cried for a while, that because you were officially different because you had your ears pierced. And to this day, to offer a little context, I'm still very much a ear piercing virgin. Still no
Yeah.
no needles here.
Well, I guess for me, yeah, it was more of it was a bit of well, I don't know, I guess when you've grown up being the same as someone else, getting your ears pierced and changing your body somewhat is a bit of a rebellion. You're kind of going against, um, or in fact challenging who you are or who you are perceived to be. And for me, my point of difference from you was no longer the fact that I had a freckle on my nose.
Mhm.
It was something a little bit more noticeable that you had earrings.
Mm.
And even now, to this day, I love earrings. I have quite the extensive earring collection. When I was in spending time in Europe recently, I had quite a bit of money to burn. So I thought, well, I could buy this really fancy Guess watch for €250, or I could spend €250 and get, X amount of pairs of earrings instead. And I thought, oh, well, bugger it. Earrings are easy. You can travel with them. Awesome.
They don't take up too much room in your big bag.
That's true.
So weird for me. I'm so not that girl. Anyway, thank God.
I'm not going to say no. I'm not complaining.
Yeah, so high school years were really hard, actually, weren't they? Being, the hot young property, new kids on the block. We were obviously, making new friends in high school, but there was a really hard time for us that we were bullied at some point. And we were bullied for just being sisters and just being related because people couldn't understand. And I don't know whether it was they were still trying to figure us out or not many twins. They weren't familiar with twins. Twins just wasn't a outrageously popular thing. So they would just tease us on the proviso that we were sisters. Like it's just such a, I don't know, Neanderthal concept. Teasing people that are twins. I don't know. I don't know why people did that or do that still to this day. But yeah, being a twin definitely didn't stop us from being our cheeky selves. Like we definitely swapped classes and maths groups and boyfriends, and some knew, what we were doing and others didn't. But yeah, it was a fun thing for us to do. And it was to the point, like, do you remember how I got dressed in all of your clothes and sat outside waiting for your boyfriend to pedal on over?
Yeah.
And we set it up to the point where you wore my clothes, I wore your clothes, and then, Mr. high school sweetheart came pedaling over and tried to give me a kiss, and I chickened out. I couldn't do it. I was like,
I wouldn't say we
no.
swapped. I wouldn't say we swapped boyfriends as much as I feel like we would try and trick them more
Mm.
than, I don't really recall us ever swapping,
Oh yes, swapping
um,
sounds bad.
but definitely trying to trick the other.
Mm.
You're always trying to challenge, what they thought they knew of you, and it was pretty funny actually. That first one that we did when we were 14 or something,
Yeah.
he knew straight away, didn't he? Oh no, he sort of came up near you and he was like, "Oh, whoa, that's not you.
I know. And
That's
then
not Jade, or that's not, yeah, that's you, Steph. What are you doing in Jade's pajamas?"
I know.
Like,
And then ran off to you, was like, oh my God, I'm permanently scarred for life. I'm
I
like,
nearly
hey,
kissed
hang
your
on, mate. I'm
sister or
not that
something. I
bad.
nearly kissed your sister. Hello.
I know. So good.
Oh,
Um,
that's so funny.
so yeah, throughout high school, like that was just like such a ball of fun. But at that point in time, like you had your ears pierced. People were very well versed in the fact that Jade had her ears pierced, Steph didn't. And then there were so other differences, obviously personality wise. And then we started going into the workplace. So it was very much defined of where we worked. Jade works at the supermarket, Steph works at the surf shop, kind of identifying us as, where our places of employment were.
Jade has really short hair and Steph has really long hair now.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Jade's always got colours in her hair and Steph's doesn't, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Steph's
Yeah.
boring, Jade's more outgoing. At that time, I suppose it was. But yeah, from Jade always had her license. So she, was driving around and Steph didn't. Steph always got to where she needed to go without too much
Bye,
convincing.
Jade.
So yeah, thanks, Jade. Taxi. No, it was so good. But yeah, so as we progressed towards adulthood, like we were both working in Byron Bay for numerous years. So you in the real estate game and me in the travel game. And I very much remember this because I feel like my early years in travel, like I worked in a backpackers travel agency right in the slap bang in the middle of Byron and along the strip where all of the backpacker travel agencies would basically be sharing a wall with each other. So there was lots of competition there. And at that time, there was no real uniform that I had to wear when I went to work. I could just wear whatever I wanted. Where Jade, in her real estate environment, like you would wear a lot of corporate clothing, high
Mm.
heels, like you looked completely different to what I look like on the daily basis.
On the street, yeah, especially.
Yeah. So do you remember ever bumping into anyone in Byron, like on a lunch break, who thought that you were me?
I do recall because I worked in an office on Lawson Street and then later in an office on Fletcher Street, and you worked in an office on Johnson Street. But I feel that if I walked down Lawson Street or Fletcher Street and I walked into the shops or went and got some lunch somewhere nearby, they knew me. They knew who I was. Hi, Jade, how you going? If I walked down anywhere in Johnson Street, which was literally the next street parallel over to Fletcher Street, um, you would get, oh, hi, Steph. Oh, geez, Steph, you look different. Oh, where are you off to today? What are you doing? And it was just the biggest, you know, uh, it's so wild, actually, trying to, yeah, same town, two different streets, right next to each other. One I was famous in, and you were famous in the other one. And when we cross over, it would confuse everyone.
Like, how dare you come into my territory?
But even and we'd go and have lunch breaks and stuff every so often. But even when we did, people would just go, oh, 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 there's two, you know, which was
Yeah.
cool. We always loved eating at Legends Pizza in Johnson Street there back in the day, didn't we?
Yeah, it was good. And I remember that person who I think they were a backpacking couple or something and they ran into at the sandwich shop and they'd slapped you on the bum and said, "Oh, what are you getting for lunch, Steph?" And I remember
Oh,
them
yes.
coming back and
Yes,
explaining to you,
actually.
the look on your face was just
Yes.
like, "Oh,
And
who are
also, I was
you?"
walking down Lawson Street one day, and you were at this point very heavily involved in the Brunswick Heads Board Riders Club,
Mm-hmm.
and you were doing a lot of. We had a network of people that wanted to help you that worked for different reputable surf brands and stuff, and they were always giving you free merchandise so you could hand out as prizes
Mm-hmm.
for the competitions. On the day when the Bruns Board Riders was on, um, and I remember walking down the street one day, and this fella grabbed me by the arm, but he had already walked past me. But on the way walking past, he must have noticed or realized that I resembled someone that looked like you, and he grabbed me and he like did this whole swingy thing around and was like, "Hey!" And I was like, "Jesus Christ, who are you?" And he was like, "I'm da da da," and I was like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "I've got those shirts for you. I've got those shirts for you," and I'm thinking, I don't know who you are. And he's looking at me thinking, I have the wrong twin. I'm like, "Are you after Steph?" He's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, sorry, I'm not Steph." He goes, "Oh, well, you look like her."
Oh no.
It's like, she just works around the corner. You can go see her. Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah,
But
well,
yeah,
so
it was
there
very,
is,
very, all very surprising.
yeah, but there is something to be said about being called the wrong twin, isn't it? When people are approaching you, they couldn't be bothered to like find out who you are. Oh, I've got the wrong twin, or you're the wrong twin. Like the amount of times that I've been called the wrong twin, it's kind of like, oh, okay, off your top then.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's a different thing, isn't it?
So,
Um,
FYI, if you've got twin friends, never ever call them the wrong twin. If you do bump into their twin, never call them the wrong twin. It's not a nice feeling.
yes. Well, I guess for other people it's, oh, I've, said the wrong name or something. Do you remember that guy I really liked because he would call a guy that we went to school, primary school with, and every time he saw us in the street, he would always go, "Hi, Jade. Hi, Steph." And I remember saying to you one day, I like him because he knows who I am. And he ended
Yeah,
up being one of my boyfriends. Do you remember?
yeah, I do.
Yeah, I was like, I like him. I'm gonna date him because he knows my name.
I like him because he knows my name. He knows me. He knows everything about me because he knows my
Yeah,
name and
he
remembers
knows
it.
my name. Yeah, and and if he wasn't sure, he'd take the time to sort of look and then say it.
Mm.
Yeah, just
Yeah, I
someone that sort
really
of just took the care to, I guess, the care to want to, learn about us, I guess.
mm.
For
Yeah, I can
sure.
really appreciate that now later in life when someone comes up, and even if you're unsure about who's who, ask the question, who am I speaking with? Who am I speaking with? Before you go engage in some like, half-hearted, shallow conversation about how work's going or how's family or whatever, just ask the question, who am I speaking to? Like Jade or Steph, which one is it? Like I love people when they ask early rather than having a long-winded conversation and they don't even know who they're speaking to. Like I really appreciate people figuring that out early.
Mm. Well, I guess for us, and I would have no doubt that this would apply to any twins out there that have an identical twin. It's the whole identity thing where you've grown up your entire life being celebrated for being very much the same, and
Mm.
being celebrated for how you were the same. And oh, look, she's the same as this one, and she does the same thing as this one, and the whole thing about, yes, they look the same, they act the same, they laugh the same, they talk the same, they're the same. um, on the flip side of that, there isn't much of a discussion or a celebration, as much as, even just because obviously we're not going, nature versus nurture. We different experiences growing up, um, and then being celebrated by how we were the same all the time. Um, and then, we would just both display differences where, and because we weren't the same, it was almost hard to accept these differences within each other, um, as well as people in the outside world and how they were perceiving us.
Mhm.
And, along with, how we were the same, but then also, yes, we were different, but I feel like there wasn't much of a discussion surrounding that, or, celebration as such.
Mm. Yeah.
So I guess it's just trying to embrace the differences within each other and celebrate them ourselves, as opposed to relying on, I guess, external validation, or I'm not sure what you want to call it, but
Mm. Yeah, no, it's interesting. And I think now later on in life, definitely, in the way that I'm building a business, it's there's a lot to be said about me having training or having to have trained people from a really early age who I am, what my point of difference is, and so it's not a mistake. People can't misconstrue that because you've been doing it your whole life. So if you've ever thought to yourself, okay, what's my personal brand? Where am I heading in life? I don't know how to blend me into my business. How do I make, my content or my social media post, or how can I humanize my business and really put myself in the forefront? I want you to think back in a time in your life where you've had to do something similar to what Jade and I have done in our life, where we've had to educate people of who we are, and zoom back to that little kid and say, thank you for having a voice and speaking up for who you are and educating people about who you are, because now we're all building businesses. Like we've just been through the massive, biggest, baddest thing in the world, and we're still very much coming out of the tail end of it. But I want you to zoom back in time and thank that little girl or boy for piping up and saying, educating people about who you are. Because now, as an adult, not only are you now leveraging off who you are, but you are including that into everything that you do and everything that you are. So never ever doubt who you are, where you've come from, what your journey's been like. Like our journey, Jade, has not been perfect. Like our journey has just been so massive, even as, twins in a family, as well as twins living their own individual lives. It's been a big thing, and it's not over yet. Thank goodness. Touch wood. Don't leave me, please. But yeah, like Jade has said in previous conversations before, like it's like having a second brain, having a twin, and it's the best thing ever, right? Like you can't remember something, you just ring up one twin and she'll have a different perspective on, you know, that particular memory or that time in your life, and it's just the best thing.
Or even a movie or a song, or do you remember a part of this? And you'll go la 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 la, and you're like, oh yeah, that one. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, good. I've been thinking
Mm.
about that one for a while.
So I really want to challenge you. If you've had any sort of thing pop up for you during this conversation, or whether you've experienced something similar throughout your life, I want you to DM me on Instagram and let me know, because we'll continue the conversation, because I feel like a lot of what we bring to the table now does have a big thing to do with confidence of who we are and where we come from. And I love the saying, and I don't know who said it, Jade, like, but it's just been circulating our lives for so long. If you don't know, you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've come from. Or
True.
if you don't know where you've come from, you don't know where you're going. I can't remember what order it is in, but they both have the same meaning to me. So yeah, I want you to embrace everything in your life that has led you up to this point and really feel confident enough in yourself to immerse all your quirks, all of your, you know, points of difference, all of your things that make you you, and melt them into everything that you do in your business, because that, my friends, is the number one key that's going to set you aside from the sea of same.
Yeah.
Thank you
And then, and
so
obviously being
much.
connected, sorry, Steph, and it being connected with every, I mean, we try and share things about ourselves to people, especially when we were kids, because we
Mm,
were trying to form a connection with these people.
mm,
That was our, you know, they were our bids for connection, tell them something about ourselves and make sure that they knew who we were. So then we could feel connected with the people around us.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's such a strong thing. I'm
Yeah.
glad you
And that
brought that
was,
up at the last minute. Thank you.
yeah. And even towards, you know, at the end too, when you are blending your identity in with your business, you are wanting to engage with people out there and form connections and rapport. And we're just sharing all of our stories, aren't we, really?
Mm. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Have you on all the time. Love ya.
Love you too.
Bye. Thank you. See
Okay,
ya.
you're welcome. Thanks for having me on. Bye.
Bye.